Great. So if you're just joining us tonight, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. So we have a record of who is here tonight, and we are continuing to let folks in. So if I repeat something instruction-wise, it's for their benefit. I'm so glad to be with you all tonight. It is good to see so many smiling faces here. I hope you had some dinner and are ready to have a lively conversation tonight. My name is Reverend Katie Sexton Wood. You can call me Katie. And I am the executive director of the Arizona Faith Network, proudly serving here, ordained in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. Tonight, I have the great honor of introducing our keynote speaker, Michael Curry, who serves as the lay minister for disability education for the Southwest Conference of the United Church of Christ. Known Michael for a while now, and I've just deeply valued his work and seen him doing great work in congregations across the state. We are an interfaith organization, but tonight's presentation will be speaking on Michael's story. So he is going to be presenting it from his lens of faith, which is the United Church of Christ. But this program he is speaking of has had interfaith congregations go through it before as well. But before we dive too deep into Michael's story, I'm going to hand the mic over to one of our amazing staff members, Ellie Hutchinson, who is our social justice program coordinator. I think I have it right, of the many titles we have in our network. So, Ellie.
Thank you. Hi, it is such a wonderful evening to be here with you. Some of you who are zooming in from the Midwest and the East Coast, thank you for coming to us at such a late time. And it is just an honor and a pleasure to be here. And Michael, I cannot wait to hear your stories again. And before we get prepared for those stories that we here at the Arizona Faith Network are going to launch a new program in the fall that is continuing to build on our mission focus, which happens to be criminal legal reform. We have found for the work that we have been doing that we love to center the voices of those directly impacted by the criminal punishment system or criminal justice system. And yet we also recognize the need to care for people when they do share those stories, when they do relive those moments. And once you hear a story, it's the beauty of the power of story, then we all become directly impacted. And so our new program that we're starting here in the fall is called our Hope Healing Humanity Circles. And they are healing circles that will be starting on the third Wednesday of every month, and they'll be virtual to start with, and eventually move into in person one day somewhere down the road. And so we're going to just spend the next couple minutes, and hopefully you have a lovely dog in the back who only wants to play when you're on Zoom, or if you don't, hopefully you have a pen and paper handy, or something that you are comfortable writing with if you would like. This is always just an optional thing. You all came here to hear Michael's stories and not necessarily participate in a healing circle, but this is just an introduction to who we are and how we continue to embrace the things that life throw at us in order to better serve our communities. And so we're gonna just delve into about 10 minutes of practice. And it starts with developing a safety plan. And so when I say safety plan, what I mean by that is, what do you do when you feel maybe stressed or saddened or unaware of something? What do you do to feel safe? That could be petting your dog. It could be eating. It could be praying. It could be meditating, whatever it is. And so we'll just spend the next 3 minutes. It's 6:37 in Arizona time. We'll give you until 6:40 to just think about some things that you do to feel safe. And now if I can bring your attention back to our Zoom screen, we're going to just spend about a minute or so just kind of settling ourselves into the space where you find yourself. The purpose of this exercise is to kind of, again, settle in, to rest, to be able to prepare yourself to hear and participate in this wonderful program this evening. And as we breathe, as you settle in, just make yourself comfortable, however that is. And allow yourself to feel in your body kind of where the weight is without passing any judgment. Letting your head rise as if there was a balloon attached to it, lifting it up. And just allowing your breath to breathe as normal. Today you have cared for someone. Now it is time to care for you. And as you settle in, before we turn it over to Michael, I want you to ask yourself, what is happening in your life right now that you might be bringing to this practice, to this event? What is happening in your life right now that you are bringing into this program? And let that go. One more question for you to breathe into, to think about. Where do you come from? Who are your people? We've always known that breath is life, maybe more so post 2020. But as you think about where it is that you come from and who are your people, when you breathe in their loving embrace, for they are lucky to be with you. And then as you exhale, of course, breathe that love back out into the world. For you, my friends, are lucky to have the world. And one more thing, wherever you are, shake it out. Stretch, dance, move, nod your head, do whatever. Make sure you know that you're real. Touch yourself, you're real. A year ago, we weren't even allowed to touch people, but now we have ourselves and we have our friends, and we're sending all of that love and energy to Michael. And I want to thank you all for coming along on that journey with me. That is a very microscopic event that, or an example of an event that will be launching here next month. And so thank you for the space and the grace in which to do so. Katie, thank you for the freedom to design this. And Michael, I am honored and excited to hear your story.
Michael, you're muted, my friend. All right, and I'm gonna go ahead. There you go.
Okay, I gotta make sure I'm unmuted so that I can actually thank the people rather than just talking to myself. So first of all, thank you, Ellie, for that beautiful meditation to begin our time together, and to Reverend Katie Sexton Wood and all of the partners of the Arizona Faith Network. It is truly an honor. It is truly a blessing, and it is truly my privilege to be with you all who are joining us here on Zoom, and for those of you who are joining us on Facebook this evening, as I had this opportunity to talk about and share something with all of you that I am truly passionate about, and that is mental health in faith communities. And I'm not just talking about the United Church of Christ. I am talking about all faith communities. So as both Reverend Katie and Ellie said, my name is Michael Curry, and I am truly honored and blessed to serve in the Southwest Conference of the United Church of Christ as the lay minister for disability education, advocacy, and awareness. And I have been serving in the Southwest Conference in this capacity since April 6, 2019. And I am so blessed that the Southwest Conference is one of the many ecumenical partners of the Arizona Faith Network. As I begin to share a little bit about myself, my story, and my call to ministry, I want to begin by sharing a little bit about my role with the Southwest Conference. And that is, I am primarily responsible for developing relationships and building partnerships with our churches throughout Arizona, New Mexico, and El Paso, Texas. I also have the distinct privilege to walk alongside and with our many congregations as they have conversations, as they enter into a time of discernment and prayer, as they walk and journey with the Spirit to see if they are ready to begin the process to become a wise congregation or wise organization for mental health. Now, for those of you who are hearing the WISE acronym for the very first time, WISE stands for welcoming, inclusive, supportive, and engaging congregations or faith communities for mental health. I will share a little bit more about the process of what it means to become a WISE congregation, a WISE faith community, or a WISE organization in a few moments. At a young age, I was diagnosed with a high functioning form of autism called Asperger's syndrome, which is a hidden brain-based different ability. Notice here how I said different ability and not disability. Because when we use the word disabled or disability, it not only puts people in a category that no one wants to be a part of, but it also focuses more on what a person cannot do rather than what a person can do, and the gifts that each and every beloved child that was created in whatever faith tradition you belong to. We honor the gifts that you bring to the Spirit's notion of a shared table for all children, for all people. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your journey, there is a space for you at our shared table. I often share with folks that there are many signs and symptoms of high-functioning autism and Asperger's syndrome, but I want to take a moment to highlight the 4 symptoms that have affected me, and there are times that these 4 symptoms still affect me today. It has been difficult for me to socialize with people my own age, as I still can be quite shy at times. It has often been difficult for me to tell whether people are laughing with me or at me, as it is often difficult for me to read facial expressions. It's often difficult for me to read body language. And one of the most difficult challenges I've had to overcome and grow into is learn how to kind of just go with the flow when someone is being just a little bit sarcastic. There have been times when it has been difficult for me to cope with change in my day-to-day routine of life. And the final symptom that still affects me to this day is that I have a high sensitivity to loud noises, such as fire alarms, for example. I am not ashamed, nor am I afraid to also admit that I struggle with heightened anxiety, bouts of depression, and symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. Keep in mind that even though I have symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, I have yet to be diagnosed with PTSD by a medical professional. I have a couple of stories that I would like to share with you this evening. And the first story is one where I met God for the very first time over 21 years ago, when my parents were in the process of getting divorced. And at that time, my father was having a difficult time accepting that one of his children had been diagnosed with a hidden brain-based different ability, and he wasn't sure how to parent a child that doesn't fit on the society's expectations or society's spectrum of life. So the first story that I want to share with you, as I said, is a story of transformation. As I had the privilege of meeting God for the very first time when I attended the Southwest Conference United Church of Christ Junior High Church Camp in July of 2000 at Mingus Mountain in beautiful Prescott, Arizona. As I said just a moment ago, this was a very dark time in my life. My parents were in the process of getting divorced. My dad was having a difficult time coming to terms with the reality that one of his children had been diagnosed with a hidden brain-based different ability, and that the sad truth of it all is at that time, I had yet to make any friends at camp. In that moment, I vividly remember that, as I said, I had yet to make any friends at camp. And as I thought about it, I thought if, my parents were always fighting about me and how they should go about parenting a child with a hidden brain-based different ability, and having most of my peers at that time use me as a target rather than taking the time to really and truly get to know me as a human being, as a child who was created in the image of God, as a child who was and is beloved by God. Let me tell you that throughout the week at camp, each family group was responsible for planning and leading a short 15 to 20-minute Vesper service to kind of wrap up the day. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the term Vespers, Vespers is a short service of evening worship and prayer. On this particular night, as I was seated in the secluded area of the camp, I vividly remember that the family group that was leading worship that night had some quiet and reflective music playing in the background. And I began to contemplate, as I was listening to this music, if my parents were always fighting about me and how to parent a child with a brain-based hidden different ability, and if I had yet to make any new friends at camp, I wrestled with the idea if life was worth living. The next thing I remember is I felt this touch, but it was not a human touch. Throughout the many times that I have shared this story, I believe it was the touch of God. And the next thing I remember was hearing this voice as I was being touched. And this voice said to me, Michael, this is not your time yet. You don't want to do this. You have a purpose and call in this life. And even though it may take you longer than most people to find and fulfill that purpose and call in your life, I guarantee that you will eventually find and fulfill your life's call and your purpose while you are here on earth. Just a quick side note, a little bit about my educational background and experience. In 2012, I received my Associate of Arts degree in Christian ministry. And in 2015, I received my Bachelor of Arts degree, both degrees online from Ohio Christian University. In August of 2018, I was certified in the state of Arizona as a recovery and peer support specialist. And I am thrilled to announce and share that for a child who was once considering suicide, I am thrilled and blessed to share that on Monday, August 30th, I will begin a 2-year graduate certificate program in leadership and ministry online through Western Theological Seminary. And with that note, I would like to invite Ellie to center us as we prepare to hear another story that will create the foundation of our conversation this evening about mental health in all faith communities, in all faith traditions.
Thank you, Michael, so much for your vulnerability, your time, and your positive persistence. It's what Octavia Butler, a science fiction author, one of her characters says, you need positive persistence in this life. And so thank you so much for that, Michael. For the hearers of these stories, we know, and like we've shared before, once you hear a story of someone, you are automatically different, whether you would recognize it right away or not. And so we are so grateful for the stories of all around us. So just for the next minute or so, just checking in. How do you feel with what it is that you just heard? What did you feel when Michael, when his voice changed a little bit? When he shared his vulnerability with us? How does it make you feel now? Wherever you might feel that in your body, send that loving, living breath there. And as we continue to hear another story from Michael, please do ask yourself the question of how do you embody what you are hearing when he says something and it might make you feel differently than you did a second before. Where is it that you feel it? And then what comes next? And then as we end our session, I'd love to ask, and I'll put this into chat later, but I'd love for you to think about with the stories and the moments that we've shared collectively together, what actions are possible now? What language do we need to change moving forward? And Michael gave us a really good example of that at the beginning. Take, just go ahead and breathe in through your nose and let it. Back to you, Michael. I need to breathe into the moments when the internet doesn't work. So I'm breathing life into my frustrations of the internet. So Michael, I turn it back over to you in case you did not hear that. My apologies. Stupid internet.
And talking about vulnerability and having to breathe that frustration into the internet, I get it. I truly get it. So as I prepare to share my second story with you, I invite and encourage you to think about, ponder, wrestle with, contemplate. As we prepare to go into our discussion groups, or I should say breakout rooms, I want you to wrestle with the idea of why it is so difficult for many people to offer, to show, to share their authentic and true selves with their faith community, with the world, and most importantly, with one another. Again, why is it so difficult for so many people to offer, to show, and to share their authentic and true selves with their faith community, with the world, and most importantly, sharing their authentic and true and vulnerable selves with one another? As I was growing up in the church, I recall that I was still very much unaware that I had been diagnosed with a hidden brain-based different ability. And as I shared earlier, I will remind you again that when we use the word disability, it puts people in a category that they not only probably don't want to belong to, but they don't want people to focus on what they cannot do. As a person of deep faith who is deeply passionate about faith communities offering a welcoming, inclusive, supportive, and engaging congregation, faith community, organization for mental health. They don't want to be a part of a community where they are thought of as disabled. I want you to think about something that I was introduced to a Australian evangelist named Nick Vujicic. Nick was born without arms and without legs. We don't know why this happened. But I want you to remember that when you put the words G-O in front of the word disabled. Do you know what you get when you put go in front of disabled? You get God is able. As a youth growing up in the church, I was very much enjoyed going to Sunday school in between Sunday morning worship service. The problem that I had growing up in the church, being unaware of my hidden brain-based different ability, is that I would often observe my peers, my fellow youth, having sidebar conversations with one another. And the teachers of the youth Sunday school class were the parents of some of the youth who would be involved in these sidebar conversations. So the level of my peers' maturity was here, and my maturity level was here. Because at that time, I really wanted to take in and take away something that was being taught, that was said, maybe an image or picture that I saw. But as I began to act as an authority figure, I would often run out of the youth room in a fit of rage. And as this became a repetitive pattern, I was in shock for what was about to happen next. I remember being called into the former senior minister's office at the church. And I could not believe the words that came out of his mouth. He said to me, "Michael, you are not allowed to participate in any youth group activities until you got your anger under control." My youth, the opportunity for me to have those experiences that I never got to have at church, at school, were taken away from me because the church did not take the time to work with me, my parents, the youth, and their parents to educate themselves on how they can be welcoming, inclusive, and supportive of a member of a youth group who had no idea that I was living with a hidden brain-based different ability. So as we prepare to enter into our time of conversation, I invite and encourage you to take a moment and take a deep cleansing breath. And as we take this deep cleansing breath together, I want you to consider, as we prepare to enter into our breakout rooms, what is your faith community doing well in the areas of being a welcoming, inclusive, supportive, and engaging people with different abilities in the overall life and ministry of your faith community. I also want you to take into consideration, where are the areas where your faith community has room to grow as you learn to become a welcoming, inclusive, supportive, and engaging faith community for all people, no matter who they are, no matter where they are on their life journey. How can we prepare ourselves to be wise faith communities where we are right now in the midst of this pandemic and beyond? And the last thing that I want to say is that I cannot thank Reverend Katie and Ellie enough for this opportunity. What an honor and blessing it is for the Southwest Conference to be one of the ecumenical partners of the Arizona Faith Network. And if either Katie or Ellie want to put my email in the chat when I say it real quick, so that if you all want to connect with me, learn more about me, learn more about my ministry in the Southwest Conference, my email is swlayminister@gmail.com. Again, that is swlayminister@gmail.com. I look forward to seeing where the rest of this night and our conversation will take us as we consider what it means to be wise in all walks of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for sharing. Oh, just so many beloved stories. As Ellie and Michael have both said, we all come into this space with stories, and we all come in with different faith communities that we are a part of that need to have a little bit different conversations. So we're going to spend about, let's say, 20 minutes or so in breakout rooms answering the questions that Michael raised. And don't worry, I'm going to pop into your room and put those questions in the chat for you again. So don't worry about remembering them specifically. But we're going to get into breakout rooms, and we invite you to lead yourselves in a conversation around what it really means to be a wise, welcoming, inclusive, and engaging faith community for all people.
And supportive too.
And supportive, thank you. Our UCCers will correct me on all of this that are here tonight. But as we are striving to be wise, I invite you also to, as you feel safe, be vulnerable with one another. And so if you are able to turn your camera on and share your story. All right, you're gonna see in just 1 second a request for you to go into a breakout room, and we invite you to go ahead and go there. And if you are joining us on Facebook, please leave a comment and we will get you the link to join on Zoom.
And then Katie, before I go into my room, while they're in there, just.
Yes, I feel that too. The big smiles or the half-spoken word that's coming out of your mouth as you're pulled back. So let's do just some quick reporting out, and then we're going to jump into some time of Q&A with Michael and have him before we leave and utilize his expertise. So what did you learn in your group? what was brought up, what was brought to life in your conversation? Just go ahead and unmute yourself and jump in.
I will just briefly touch on what we talked about in the group. It is important for us to differentiate between folks that are differently abled and folks that have mental illness. So both of those can they can co-occur, but it's not helpful for us to assume that somebody who is differently abled also has a mental illness. We see this a lot with folks with cerebral palsy or other neurodivergent kind of situations where people will assume that there's a mental illness there, and there's absolutely, they can co-occur, but that's not always the same.
Thanks, Gina. Anyone else? What came up? Where was the energy in your conversation?
I reminded our group that it is important to acknowledge our humanness, as I think sometimes wherever we find ourselves on the journey of our lives individually and collectively as different faith traditions, different beliefs, different backgrounds, I think it's important that we honor our humanness and acknowledge the way in which we feel and experience life. What I mean by that is that some days, some people will ask me, how am I doing? And when I really want to say what the truth is, I feel as though I can't honor myself because society has a certain expectation that because I am a lay minister for disability education, advocacy, and awareness, that I have to always have it all together and, be this happy-go-lucky person. And yet there are days where I forget that I am a human being. I'm more than a minister. I'm a human being. And I think sometimes we forget to acknowledge our humanness through our feelings and emotions that we all experience in our day-to-day lives.
That's great, Michael. One more before we move into Q&A. All right, let's see. I'm gonna have to call on someone. All right, Stop Beer.
Okay, thank you very much. I was hoping somebody else from our group would speak. Mary Alice left us with some beautiful wisdom that never give up hope. Recovery is possible with the proper support, whether, through medication and community. That's not an exact quote, but, and Lori was wonderful in sharing about her wanting to bring forth a resolution within her faith community that models what Mary Mary Alice told us was a successful resolution in support of WISE within her faith community. And we also talked about connecting, since we're all from Tucson, connecting once it's a bit safer, to look at doing something for the community in a, for me, I like to talk about multi-faith, but an interfaith, and Lori did mention that ecumenical is also very important. The other thing that I'm going to have to, I will say, because it's from my perspective, is that Sikhs and people from different communities often see the mental health model in Western society as a colonizing strategy, and they resist it. So we have to find ways to gather support for them without just triggering that colonization or making assumptions from our own Western, not even just white, but Western European background. Thank you.
Wow.
There's something I'd like to say before you end. A lot of times, people who have a mental health challenge, especially a serious one, think that that is who they are. They think that they are the mental health challenge. When I facilitate groups, I go around and ask people to share their name, something about them that's not related to their mental health, and then say, and I'm much more than that. And inevitably, someone says, hi, I'm John, I'm bipolar, and I'm not much more than that. And it's really important for people who want to work with people who have a mental health challenge to remember that they are much more than their mental health challenge.
Gosh, Mary Alice, thank you so much for adding that. It's such an important point. And I just got to say, shout out to my disciples of Christ on the call here that are showing up in force. I love it. I'm dropping a link to our toolkit that is in process. Our toolkits are ever evolving. They're not stagnant, but these are resources Michael provided for us to look at and to carry forth from tonight. If you have additions you think would be helpful to the interfaith community as we continue these conversations, please send them my way and I will add them or get our tech wizards to add them on the back end as well. I do want to lift up that we are looking to have Reverend Sarah Griffith Lund at some point to lead us in a conversation, who's an author of a couple of books and works for the Disciples denomination as well. So those are our next steps. But I want to give just a few moments for anyone that has questions specifically for Michael tonight. And I will kick it off. If not, then I have one for you. I'm interested as a former congregational and current part-time congregational pastor, what is it about the faith communities you've found that are welcoming and wise? How are they different than the ones you have felt out of place at or rejected?
I think it's when I think about how to respond to that question, I think when I look at the future of what the church can be and what faith communities and different faith traditions can do, I think it's a matter of creating different ways to worship whatever your belief system is, if I'm if that's okay for me to say that. So, for example, if there is an older member of your congregation and they would like to lead a responsive reading, but they have a difficult time, like your lectern, they have to use a couple of steps, they have to go up a couple of steps to get to. A simple way for them to participate is if a church has a handheld mic, they can just use a handheld mic, versus where for me, when I got asked to leave my youth group, it just felt like there was no place for me in the church. There was no place for God in my life. And as time went on, as much as I kept turning my back on God and the church, God and the church, never stopped trying to get me to come back. If that's, find a way back to, as I shared in my story, use the gifts that the Spirit has bestowed upon me to create a place for me at many faith traditions, notions of a shared table. I hope that answers your question, Katie.
I think it's a good point there. All right. Any other questions for Michael in our last few minutes? Gail?
I would like to, Michael had to kind of create the position he's in at the Southwest Conference. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you do in that position? I know because I follow you, but others might be interested.
Absolutely. So actually, I will talk about an experience yesterday. I had the opportunity to preach at First Church Phoenix, where the Arizona Faith Network sponsored one of the many cooling centers, and I had the opportunity to volunteer for a couple of days at First Church Phoenix during that effort. So what I do is I go around and I share my story exactly like you heard tonight. And I don't share my story in a way in which it's my 15 minutes of fame. I share my story in a way that brings hope in two different ways. Hope helps us to open other people's eyes, but hope also helps us to step back and to hear the experiences of other people. So when I share my story, it is my heartfelt hope and prayer that when we leave from this virtual space, whether you are joining us here on Zoom or if you have joined us on Facebook Live this evening, that you leave with the strength and the courage and the power to find it within yourself to be vulnerable, to say to your pastor, your faith leader, your spiritual guide, whoever it is, wherever you worship, and acknowledge that humanness and acknowledge that it's okay to be vulnerable and to share who you truly are. Because none of us are perfect. We all have challenges. We all have areas of growth. And for me, I didn't have as much time as I would have liked to have practiced tonight. So my area of growth is letting go and letting the Spirit guide me in what I am supposed to say, how I'm supposed to feel, what I'm supposed to experience, and beyond. So it's really about how my story can be an encourager of hope, of new light, and a new love for each other, and the love that is shared within and beyond the various faith traditions that are represented here this evening. So it's really, truly about being true and authentic to who you are at any given time, in any given place, at any given moment. We are all divine children, and we should not let anyone deny us of our humanness. We should be brave in acknowledging our humanness and acknowledging that we are humans who feel and experience a wide range of emotion.
What a perfect way to end this evening. Those are amazing last words. I want to thank you everyone for being here, for taking the time, which we have learned is a key lesson in tonight's storytelling and how we should interact in our faith communities and with everyone around us, is to take the time to see the sacred in everyone around us. So with the words we are lifting up in the chat, taking hope and recovery and time to learn and patience with us, we are going forth tonight with a grateful, full heart because of you, Michael. Thank you for being vulnerable enough to share your story. Thank you for helping us to learn and to grow. We will continue this conversation, so stay tuned to our newsletter for our next gathering, and have a wonderful night. Many blessings, everyone. You will get a follow-up email with Michael's contact information and our toolkit link again.
And then also, I look forward to journeying with Arizona Faith Network as we look at the criminal justice system and how we are being called to reform that. And I do believe that as we work to reform the criminal justice system, that mental health and mental illness plays a huge role in that. And I look forward to journeying with all of you who are already involved in that process. And I look forward to becoming a part of that process through the Arizona Faith Network.
Yes, amen to that. All right, thank you, everyone. Blessings.
Blessings. Good night.
Good night. Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.